Hi, and thanks for joining. If you're new here, I'm Wendy, and this is Nina's Jewels. My husband and I buy things at garage sales, flea markets, thrift stores, just about anywhere we can find things to sell online and flip for a profit. If that's content you're interested in, you're in the right place. Please make sure to hit that like button. And if you're not subscribed already, please make sure you subscribe so you can be kept informed of all of our latest content. Today's video is going to be what sold for the week of April 9th through 15th. Let's get started. The first thing we sold was a spool of ribbon from Hobby Lobby in the color turquoise. It was like burlap floral ribbon. We got this at the Goodwill bins. We paid 94 cents and it sold for $10.99. The next thing we sold was a pair of rubber boots. They were by the brand Nomad. They were rubber rain boots. They were just made to look like cowboy boots. They were, we paid $10 for them, which we would not pay again. We definitely paid too much for these. They sold for $32.19. And we barely made a profit on them. They were really heavy. And I think they went all the way to Oregon, which for us is a very expensive ship because we live in Texas. So, and then I think they also bought these with a promotional coupon. So we barely made anything. I think we made like pennies on this sale. We would not spend this much money on these again. And they took a really long time to sell. So that was a bad buy. The next item was a bad buy too. So we are definitely off to a bad start on this week. Next item was an Anthropologie jacket. I think it was an older brand and the brand was Tabitha, but honestly, I am not that knowledgeable about Anthropologie tags, so don't quote me on this. But it was a beige wool blend ruffle front blazer. That is hard to say. We got this at a thrift store. We paid $11.77. I don't know why we paid that much. I don't know what we were thinking. Honestly, that was probably an accident. That's probably something we put in the cart and then intended to look up, and then it just stayed in our cart, because I can't imagine that we looked that item up and intended to keep it. So that one we barely made any money on as well. It sold for $32 even on best offer, and that was definitely also a bad buy. Next up was a good buy. It was an ABC embroidery hoop aid so that you would use to, I guess, help you create a hoop, or I don't know anything about embroidery, but it was called a hoop aid, and it's called the Snappy Machine. This we picked up in the Goodwill bins. We have a video where we show us picking it up. If I can find that video, I'll link it above and in the description below. This we got in the Goodwill bins for 67 cents and it sold for $45 even on best offer. Next up was an item we got in the Facebook Marketplace garbage bags of clothes. We only paid 67 cents per item for these, so a lot of them sold for lower price, but we have made our money over and over and over again on these bags of clothes. So that was definitely a great buy. If I could find something like that again, I would do it, even though I don't really want to be in the business of selling clothes still. That was definitely a great deal. We've made tons of money on that. This was a Croft & Barrow men's classic white dress shirt. It sold for $11.98 on offer to buyer, and we got positive feedback on it. Another item that sold was a vintage 1993 Microsoft Windows User's Guide book. We found this in the Goodwill bins. We paid 94 cents for it, and it sold for $14.99. It was our full asking price. Next up, we also found in the Goodwill bins, it was an Old Navy boys youth size large Sherpa fleece lined trucker jacket. This is a great example of picking something up based on style and not brand. Old Navy is not a brand I would normally pick up, but I picked this up because I knew that this style would sell, and I knew it would sell for good money, and it did. It sold for $30.38, and we only paid 61 cents for this. I just know that like a corduroy Sherpa-lined trucker jacket would sell and sell for high, despite the fact that it was Old Navy, because it's made to look like, you know, a Levi's style jacket. And it sold relatively quickly. I think we probably sat on it for 2 or 3 months, but that might have been because of the seasonality, although this sold in, you know, spring, and we're going into summer and it still sold. I think, you know, that really didn't make much of a difference. So style definitely sometimes outweighs brand. Next up was something that we got in, I guess you would call it like a reseller lot that I got on Facebook Marketplace. This was the brand was Sunday. It was a women's extra large gray t-shirt, and it said in script font, "Always amazing," across the front. When I bought this, it said that it was a plus size box, and so it was supposed to have all plus size clothing in it, and then it totally didn't. I mean, it had like size small in it, up to extra large, and really very little to no plus size clothing in it. So it was not at all what I expected, and not at all a good deal. It also did not have the number of pieces in it that it said it would. So total ripoff. But this sold for $14.38, and my per item cost on that box was $4.17. So we still made a profit on that, and I got positive feedback on it, so that's good. Next up was a vintage 1982 Cabbage Patch doll. We got this in the Goodwill bins. We paid 67 cents for it. This sold for $15 even on best offer. We didn't make much of a profit on it, but you know, you see a Cabbage Patch doll in the Goodwill bins and it's really hard to not pick it up. Next up was a Christmas Story 2, not the original Wonderful Christmas Story, but a Christmas Story 2. But it was new in package, new sealed. We actually got 2 copies of this on the same day. This sold for $8.48 on offer to buyer. We paid 94 cents for it. We got positive feedback on it. Next up was one of the vintage Playboys. We got from the lot of vintage Playboys that we got on Nextdoor. We paid $1.43 per issue. This one was the April 1982 issue. It sold for, let's see, $10 even on best offer. Next up was a lot of 3 artsy brand sticky mosaic craft kits. A buyer reached out to me through a listing that we had and asked if we would create a custom listing for her with some of the items that we had in another listing, and I was happy to do that. I usually don't do that, but it's a long story. It was just really easy for me to create this custom listing in this case, so I did do that for her. This sold for $12.99, and our cost on this item was 67 cents. Next up was a men's Rolling Stones t-shirt. It wasn't a vintage t-shirt, it was modern. We picked this up in the Goodwill bins. And this is an example of picking up a modern t-shirt just because I knew it would sell based on style. It sold for $9.88 on offer to buyer, and we paid 61 cents for it. Next up was a vintage 2000, the brand was called City Bears. It was a New York Police Department plush bear. It was kind of in the same style as a Beanie Baby. It sold for $12.98. It still was new with its tags. We paid $1.33. We did get positive feedback on it, but it was kind of like backhanded positive feedback. The feedback said, you know, they liked the item, it was really cute, but complained about how the delivery driver left it next to their rabbit hutch where somebody could have taken it. And I'm like, well, that is totally, you know, you need to complain to your post office, not complain on the eBay platform. I'm really sorry that happened, but that's totally not my problem. I don't know. People never cease to amaze me. Next up is a pair of Under Armour athletic shorts that belong to my son. These sold for $12.58 and our cost was $0. I think my mom gave these to my son. Next up was these were Philips gel pillow mask. This is something that you would use with a CPAP machine, but these are not prescription. This is not a prescription item. And we sold 2 of these. I will warn you that you cannot sell a lot of CPAP items because they are prescription. So if you ever pick up any kind of medical equipment that requires a prescription, do not sell that on eBay. That will get you in big trouble and could potentially get you suspended or restricted. So the way I researched this item to find out if it could be sold is I researched it on Google and found out if it was sold on other legitimate websites and if you could purchase it without a prescription. And I found out that you could, and that's how I knew that it would be okay to sell it on eBay. And it was. So I was able to sell it and they sold very, very quickly. And if I found these items again, I would definitely pick them up. So 2 sold to the same buyer immediately. They sold for $39.98 together. We got these in the Goodwill outlet and we paid $1.34 for these 2 together. Next up was a brand called Live a Little. It was like what I would refer to it as a sweater jacket. It had sweater sleeves and then like a suede jacket type bodice. And it was in a plus size. It sold for $30.38 on offer to buyer, and we got this at a garage sale for $2. Next up was a pair of H&M jeans that belonged to my daughter. These sold for $17.88 on offer to buyer, and I don't know how much we paid for these, so I just have our cost as $0. Unfortunately, these were returned. The buyer said there was a fit issue, and so we have relisted these. Next up is a bottle of Body Fantasies fragrance body spray in the scent Paradise Fantasy. We got this at a garage sale. We paid 50 cents for it, and it sold for $9.99 on full asking price. Next up was an item that we got from a friend who was downsizing her home, and she gave us a lot of her collectible pewter and similar type items to sell. This was an antique hand crank coffee grinder by the brand Fabric Mark K&M. It sold for $55 even on best offer, and our cost was $0. So thank you to Susan for that. Next up was a charcoal knit jacket by the brand Cabby. It sold for $19.88 on offer to buyer. We got this at a thrift store. We paid $5.86, and it sold on offer to buyer. Next up was a vintage set of 3 needle points. They were really pretty. They had like broccoli on one, corn on one, and pea on one. So they would be for a kitchen. And those sold for $69.99. We got those from the other business that we own, from the old stock that business no longer sells. Next up was an Anthropologie item from the brand Lily's Closet. It was a beige crochet hooded vest. It sold for $33.33 on best offer, and we paid $3.79 at the thrift store. Next up was a leopard print modal. The fabric content was modal, which is if you ever see that fabric, it means that it's probably a high-end brand. And it was like a scarf or a wrap, very lightweight. And the brand is Elizabeth Gillett, which is definitely something that you should, it's a bolo. I would pick that up. It sells quickly. And even though this particular item didn't sell for very high, it was so lightweight, we still made a lot of money on it, and it sold really, really quickly. So if I were to see the brand Elizabeth Gillett, I would typically pick it up. It sold for $14.58 on offer to buyer, and we only paid 61 cents at the Goodwill bins. Next up was a Cabela's men's flannel shirt, and then it had faux suede trim on it. We got this at a garage sale for $1, and it sold for $13.99. That was our full asking price. Next up is another one of those Philips gel pillow masks. This one sold for $16 on best offer, and we only paid 67 cents at the Goodwill bins. We got positive feedback on this one. Next up is a Talbot's ivory open front cardigan. It had like a faux leather trim on it. We got this at the thrift store for $1.89, and it sold on offer to buyer for $14.58. Next up is one of the free magazines from the big lot of free magazines that we got on Nextdoor. This one was Country Magazine, and it was the October-November 2011 edition or issue. It sold for $7.18 on offer to buyer. Next up was a vintage bottle of Cacharel perfume. We got this at an estate sale for 50 cents, and it sold for $21 even on best offer. Next up was something we got in that big box of auto parts from that Sugar Train estate sale. And this is something that I had no idea you could sell, and it is old car keys. It was a lot of 13 old car keys from like a Toyota, Kia, GM, Ford. And so when I was going through that box, because it had all kinds of stuff in it, I always look up everything because you never know what has value. And I found out that you can sell old car keys, and I was shocked when these sold pretty fast. They sold for $18.99, and I had averaged out the cost of each item in that box, that we paid $15 for the box in total. I'd averaged out our cost of each item at 75 cents. So who knew you could sell old car keys? So interesting. Next up was a 12-pack of ball mason jar lids. These sold for $6.50, and they were new in package. We got them in the Goodwill bins, and we paid 92 cents for them. Next up was a pretend play, like kids' little wrench. It was, we listed it as a impact wrench tool. We got it at the thrift store. It was in a bag of toys, and let's see, we paid 43 cents for it, and it sold for $13.99. Next up was another item we got in a bag of kids' toys at the thrift store, and we paid 68 cents for this, and it was a Baby Einstein Pavlov the dog figure. And man, this item had a lot of interest. I was surprised. Apparently, Baby Einstein toys, like little figures and old vintage Baby Einstein toys, have a lot of collectors. So if I ever see vintage Baby Einstein toys at a garage sale or thrift store, I would probably look them up or pick them up if I could get them for the right price. I did not know that there was that there were collectors for these items. So we sold this item for $13. How much did we sell it for? No, we sold this item for $16.99, just this little 3-inch little figurine, which was our full asking price, and we only paid 68 cents for it. So go figure. I had no clue. This was just an accidental pickup from a bag of toys that we probably purchased for something else, and we learned something new. So interesting. Next up was a set of 2 retro style. These were not vintage, but they came along. My husband ordered a t-shirt that had an Atari logo on it, and he got these bonus 2 like retro style stickers with it. And so we sold the stickers, and they sold for $8.78. There was no cost to us because he just bought the t-shirt, and it was a bonus that came along with it. Next up was a lot of 3 toner cartridges that we got in the big liquidation lot of toner that we bought. These were not name brand toners, but they were designed to go in an HP. We paid $3.19 for them, and they sold for $21.59. The buyer had used a 20% off promotion that we had going on, I think for like office supply type stuff at the time. Next up was a pair of American Eagle boyfriend jeans. We got these in the Goodwill bins. They sold for $19.59, and our cost was $1.68. Next up was a pair of earrings that we got in the Goodwill bins. We got like a lot of jewelry in the Goodwill bins. I think a store had donated, like Hobby Lobby, or we get a lot of stuff. Our Goodwill bins get a lot of stuff from Joann, a lot of crafting stores. And I know that sometimes they, sell little jewelry and stuff like that. And I have a feeling these came from Joann. I don't know why. It might have been the way they were marked. But anyway, this was little 2-inch 4-stone dangle earrings. And we have necklaces, we have so much jewelry that is not selling. This is not something that I would pick up again. I don't know what we're gonna do with it. Eventually, if it doesn't sell individually for us, we'll probably lot it together and do it as some kind of wholesale lot. But I don't know. I don't know if it was a good pickup. So far, it has not been. But these earrings sold. They sold for $10.38, and we had paid 68 cents for them. Next up was a Real sale, and the brand was C.A. Marjan. I don't know if I'm saying that correctly, but it was a hot pink bias cut midi skirt. And we got this at the thrift store. We paid $7.57, and it sold on the Real for $57. I would definitely pick this brand up again, but I don't think I would send it into the Real again because my profit wasn't as high as I would like it to be, and I think I could have made more money on this if I had held out for a little bit longer on selling it on eBay. I just think that sometimes selling high-end items like this on eBay, you have to be really patient, and sometimes it can take a couple of years. You just have to wait. You have to wait for the right buyer, and especially with this item, because it was a size 0, it would have taken a long time to sell. But you just have to be patient and hold out for the right buyer. Next up was a large, like 2-foot tall bunny rabbit that we picked up in the Goodwill bins. And it was new with tags. I have a video of us picking it up. If I can find it, I will link it in the description below and up here. But it was a really cute, fluffy, huggable. It was actually called, the brand was Hug Me, bunny rabbit. And it sold for $34.38, right in time for Easter. And we paid 67 cents for that. Next up was a signed and numbered wildflower art print by a Texas artist, Opal Palmer. She's now deceased, but she was someone that my family knew and was a former customer of the other business that we own. That sold for $36.99, and that was our full asking price. We have several more of those prints if you're interested. They're really nice. Next up is a kid's dress up cowboy hat, like Halloween costume, sheriff's hat. That sold for only $11 even, but we did still manage to eke out a little bit of a profit on that. We had that in our store for a really long time. That was something that belonged to my kids, so at least we didn't have any cost of goods for that. Next up was a new old stock, new in package, vintage gold glitter. We got that in the Goodwill bins. We paid $1.50 for it, and it sold on offer to buyer for $10.98. Next up was a lot of 2 sports bras. These belong to my daughter, and they sold for $13.99, and they sold for our full asking price. Next up was a genuine Coach brown signature hobo shoulder bag. It came with the original dust bag, and we got this at an estate sale. We paid $15 for it, and it sold for $65 even on best offer. Next up was a garden and gun magazine that we got in the big lot of free magazines on Nextdoor. It sold for $12.99. Next up was a Fusion Frenzy Xbox game. It was complete, but the case had damage, and we disclosed that. We got this at a garage sale for $1, and it sold for $9.99, which was our full asking price. Next up was a vintage pair of Rochester shoe trees. These we got in the Goodwill bins. We paid 92 cents and they sold for $16 on best offer. Next up is a vintage 1976 Wings record. It's a single, a 7-inch single. It sold for $8.99 and we purchased it at an estate sale for 30 cents. It sold for our asking price and we got positive feedback on that. Next up is a 10 by 10 lithograph. I'm not even going to attempt to say that because I think it's in French and I will completely butcher it. But the good news is that we got this item as a gift for attending an art auction on a cruise ship. And it sold for $49.99 and we had no cost associated with it. So this is a perfect example of why we always accept free gifts and always take advantage of any opportunities to go do free things and see what comes of it, because you never know when you're going to be able to source things or where you're going to be able to source things. So we're going on a cruise in the next few weeks and we'll be attending the art auction. Next up is a Norma Kamali tank dress. We got this at a thrift store. We paid $6.94 for it, and this dress sold for $40 on best offer. Next up was a new in package OtterBox. We got this at a garage sale for 50 cents, and it sold for $8.48. And last but not least, I'll go over all of the collectible cards from my husband's personal collection that sold for this week. We sold 12 cards for a total of $28.48. It was kind of a light week for us card-wise. That wraps up our week of sales. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please make sure to give us a thumbs up. And if you're not already subscribed, please make sure you hit that subscribe button with the notification bells turned on. We will see you guys next time, and thank you so much for watching. Bye.